Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. Although we can't see you all, I've been sitting there and watching the numbers increase, so it's great to see so many of you interested in finding out a bit more about a career in banking. A huge thank you to ACCA and Success at Schools for inviting us here today to speak to you all. I will apologise now that I am full of the cold, so please bear with me between the sneezing and the red nose. I will definitely try and get through the next half an hour. If you have any questions, then please feel free to pop them in the Q&A or the chat box, whichever one's at the bottom of your screens, and we will try and get through as many of them as possible at the end of the session. So just to introduce myself, my name is Fiona Miller. I graduated from Newcastle University with a marketing degree in 2016. In between my second and third year at uni, I did a marketing internship at Santander and then returned the following September in 2016 on their retail grad scheme. Following a grad scheme, I worked in the sponsorship and events team, and I'm currently in HR where I am managing the graduate and apprentice scheme. So I kind of feel like I've done a full circle, and I'm really excited to be able to focus my role on the experience of future graduates and apprentices, hopefully like yourselves. So for the agenda today, we really want to tell you a little bit more about our programmes. Fully appreciate that some of you will be looking at programmes now, whereas some of you that might be a few years ahead. So we just want to give you a little bit of a taste of what you can expect from our programmes and the sorts of things that we advertise for. We'll also give you a little bit of a taster of our application process as well. Again, this does change throughout the years, but it'll hopefully just give you an idea of what to expect. And then you'll also hear from our graduate panel who will talk about their experience of being a graduate and an apprentice at Santander. So moving on then, this, as I said, is just to give you a snapshot of the types of programmes that we offer at Santander. This is our 2024 offering. So we are currently live for these schemes at the moment, and they will start, so the candidates will start in September 2024. So we only have one apprenticeship scheme that's open for applications, which is our corporate and commercial scheme. And then we have a few more graduate programmes in a typical kind of finance and treasury area, but then also within retail too. The majority of these are based in our fantastic new office called Unity Place, which some of you are hopefully aware of, based in Milton Keynes, although the corporate and commercial do tend to be a lot more regional based. And I'm sure that Roshni, who we're going to invite onto our panel later, can talk to you a little bit more about what you can expect from that side of things. So just moving on then to give you a bit of an insight into our application process and the journey that you can expect to follow if you are applying this year or looking to apply in future years. There's a great video on our website that will provide you with a lot more insight into which each of these individual elements entails. So I'm just going to briefly go through them, but please do visit the website to find out a little bit more information. Excuse me. So starting with the application form, and what I should probably say actually across all of these is that whilst this is a Santander journey, this is definitely not bespoke to Santander. So if you are looking to apply for other schemes, perhaps within a bank or even kind of within larger corporations, you'll likely go through a similar application process. So if you're not interested in applying for a Santander scheme, please don't think this doesn't apply, because absolutely similar types of application processes will be used by other companies. So the application form that we ask you to fill out is very simple and straightforward. We fully appreciate that as you're coming onto one of our emerging talent schemes, you won't necessarily have 20 years worth of experience within the banking industry. So if you don't have any work experience, then please don't feel as though you can't apply, because that's not necessarily what we're looking at. We won't just be looking at work experience, we'll also look at your personal experience and the skills that you're able to bring from the experiences that you have gone through in your personal life, or just through at school or college or at university. The application form itself should take around 10 minutes to complete, and as I say, is really, hopefully you will agree, straightforward and simple to complete. So the next stage is that you will receive an email from our game-based testing system. So within the games, we are looking at a range of things, including your numeracy skills and your problem solving skills, and a couple of other competencies as well. Again, it's not trying to trick you out. It's just trying to understand how your brain works and whether you would be a good fit for Santander. I think when we say game-based testing, sometimes people think that, I'm not going to take these seriously, but although they are in the format of a game, we'd definitely still say it's worth kind of taking that time out, finding that quiet space to complete them. Don't think, I usually do some sort of gaming on my phone when I'm on the bus on my way into college, so I'll just do the game-based testing then. We'd definitely recommend trying to take it as seriously as you can, just to make sure that you represent yourself and your skills as best as you can. So following that, if we like what we see from your score, then we will invite you to complete a one-way interview. The one-way interview is a little bit of a strange process in that you will get a question come up on screen, and then you will be asked to record yourself answering it. Now, the questions I unfortunately cannot share with you today, but my top tip would be go onto Google, just have a look at some really common interview questions and think about what your response to those would be. Because although you might not necessarily get that exact question, if you've prepared for a question on teamwork, then chances are you might get a similar sort of question where that teamwork example would come in useful. So it's really useful to get your brain start thinking about the examples that you might use. And then once you have recorded your one-way interview, our team, our recruitment team will review that, and then a handful of candidates will be invited to our assessment centre. So our assessment centre is made up of two parts. The first part is a competency-based interview. So this is where you'll be asked more questions about the skills and experience that you can bring to Santander. And then the second element, you will be given a case study where we'll ask you to work through it and talk about how you would eventually hopefully find the answer to the problems that you are presented with. My advice across all of this is please relax. Throughout none of it, we're trying to trick you out. We're just trying to get a good understanding of what it is that you can bring to Santander and make sure that you would be a good fit within Santander. Definitely focus on getting the basics right. So as I said, make sure that you find a quiet space to complete them. Do that little bit of research beforehand. Check your background. So with the one-way interview, when you're being asked to record your answer, just get your phone up on the camera front ways and just quickly record yourself doing a quick practice. Make sure there's nothing in the background that you wouldn't want anyone to see, and that you're happy with how you're coming across in your response. As I said, this is relatable to Santander at the moment, but definitely other companies are likely to follow a similar structure. So that advice will hopefully support any other applications that you might be looking to submit. So that was definitely a whistle-stop tour of the kinds of programs that you can find at Santander and what our application process is. By all means, as I said, go to our website where you'll find a little bit more information, lots of hints and tips. You can also sign up to our talent pool on our website as well. And throughout the year, we will send you our newsletter, where within there as well, we'll give you lots of hints and tips as well. And you can hear from previous graduates and apprentices who have gone through a similar process and what their advice to you would be. So now moving on to our panel, I'd like to welcome Remi and Roshni in. We will ask them to introduce themselves, and then we've got a few questions for them, and I will take a look at the questions as well that hopefully you've all been submitting, and we will get their thoughts on their experience. So Remi, can I welcome you in, please? And if you just want to introduce yourself and give a little bit of background, that would be great.
Thanks, Fiona. Thank you. And thanks all for joining as well. I'm going to caveat again, as Fiona did, by starting off by saying that, like her, I am also ill. So if you do hear the occasional cough, then it's one of us for sure. But yes, I'm Remi. I've worked at Santander for quite a while now, for about 8-ish years. But I worked for them through university while I was studying in their contact centre in Glasgow while at university there. And when I finished, I moved on to our finance graduate program in 2020. Now, and at uni as well, I had an internship, not at Santander, a separate internship overseas, but that did help me get onto the grad program eventually. But yeah, on the grad scheme in finance, I've done things like general corporate accounting. I worked in treasury for a year, so looking at asset and liability management, as well as liquidity management as well. And then from there moved into strategy and corporate development on the grad scheme for my final year on it, and transitioned from that to a permanent role in the strategy team. What we tend to do in the strategy team is three things primarily. The first is bank-wide strategy. So that will be your kind of corporate direction, bank direction, what we want to achieve, where we want to achieve it, our kind of goals and ambitions and mission, that kind of stuff. The second part is corporate development, as the name might suggest. So what that is your typical M&A type activities. So are we going to buy a competitor? Are we going to spin off a division? Are we going to look to expand in a certain area? Those kind of general high level things there. And the third part is what's typically called strategic projects, but might also be known as internal consulting. So for that, where the business area has a need that they can't quite meet themselves, whether it be expertise in a certain sector or field, or an outside look, or what they're wanting to do, they would then come to us, and we would give an opinion and help out on that project. So that's my general short history and what I do now. But any questions on any of that, I'd be more than happy to answer.
Thanks, Remi. I'm sure there will be lots of questions. I've got lots of questions myself on that. So if nobody else does, then I'll send a few your way. Roshni, can I just invite you in? And if you want to do the same, so just introduce yourself and give us a bit of background on your journey at Santander.
Mm-hmm. Okay, hi guys. My name's Roshni, and so I'm a 2021 corporate and commercial banking apprentice. So I joined Santander when I was 18, so I literally just finished my A-levels and joined as an apprentice into the scheme. So with the corporate and commercial banking scheme, it works in rotations. So I have 6 months in different areas across the bank to get a really good feel of what the bank does as a whole and what different people within the bank do. So for my rotations, my first rotation was in front office. So when I say front office, that means colleagues in the bank who are talking to customers every day, going to customer meetings, going to these networking events to bring more customers into Santander. So that was in the real estate team. So I was working a lot with different properties, residential properties, etc. And then for my second rotation, I was in foreign exchange. So I was doing trades on the trading floor, which was really fun. And then for my third rotation, I was in middle office, which is sort of like behind the scenes of what happens in front office. So I was working on Salesforce, which is sort of a platform that we use to submit requests for redemption statements, which probably means absolutely nothing to you guys, but that's the only way I can really explain it. And then the last rotation, I was in structured finance and working with financial sponsors. So working with M&A, so mergers and acquisitions, and doing really high level debt solutions. And then recently, so I finished my apprenticeship after I got my degree, and I recently rolled up into my permanent role, which is a relationship manager in commercial clients London. So that is a front office role where I'm speaking to customers on a daily basis, which is why I chose the role. But with commercial clients, it's just for smaller size businesses that grow with us as the business itself grows as well. So I work with customers such as sweet companies and hairdressers and stuff like that. So yeah, it's really interesting. But yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Thanks, Roshni. And I'm going to come straight to you and ask the question about, you must have had that situation when you were at school or college and you were looking at, do I go to university or do I do an apprenticeship, or, what are my options? How did you end up deciding to apply for a Santander apprenticeship, and what considerations did you give to it?
So I was in my year at school was COVID had been and gone, lockdown was over, but we still weren't sitting those external exams that get sent across and marked externally. So our school would sitting exams, but obviously this wasn't a formal exam that they could use. So obviously I was very much unsure about what my results are going to be, because I needed to get really, really good results for my first level uni, and I just wasn't sure that I'd get it because the exams were so different this year. So I started looking at other options that I could do, and I looked at an apprenticeship, and I can admit this now, but back then I was thinking, when I think of an apprenticeship, it's very much, I think of manual labor, because that's just what you would associate with an apprenticeship. But after looking into it and just Googling what the different apprenticeships there are out there, I learned so much. Like there's banking apprenticeships, you have solicitor apprenticeships. There's just so many things you can go into with an apprenticeship. And especially with this apprenticeship, because you do get a degree. I think that was also really important for me, because I did want a degree, but then I wasn't sure if I was able to go uni because of the grades that I would get if we got our exams marked internally. But yeah, so that was sort of my main reason, because I basically didn't know what was going to happen with my results. But I think it was the best decision. And a lot of people ask me, do you regret not going to uni? And I genuinely do not regret it at all. I think if I did go to uni, I'd be in third year right now. So I'd be looking for grad schemes, looking for internships. And with this, I'm sort of already got my foot in the door, and I managed to get a permanent role within 2.5 years. So I think it's great. I can't, not being biased, but if I was you, I would go for this scheme.
No, I'm sure a lot of people would have found that really useful. And yeah, definitely, like you say, I think apprenticeships have changed a lot over the years, and what they used to be, they've kind of evolved from that and offer a lot of different routes into the corporate world of banking. Remi, so I'm going to come to you. You obviously went to university. How did you make that decision of going to uni?
So I'm a bit older than Roshni, and I think that when I went to school, at least in my school, it was assumed that you would go to university.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of just the done and assumed thing. So I didn't really give it much thought at the time. From what Roshni said, I fully see the value of apprenticeships. If I could have been making money as soon as I left school, rather than having tens of thousands of pounds for student debt, the option would be fairly obvious in hindsight. I think as well that the other side of that, I suppose, is that I feel like you grew up a fair bit at uni in a fairly low pressure environment, where if you make a mistake, then, who really cares that much? Whereas if it's in a career, Santander is very forgiving, but it's still a commercial environment, not to dissuade you from doing it at all, because as Roshni said, it's a great experience. But that's just why I personally chose to go to uni rather than do an apprenticeship.
Yeah, I think I was similar. It was kind of a given that you would go to uni, and then that was it. So yeah, it's great. There's lots of options available now. And something you said there, Remi, about working in Santander and kind of that forgiving culture. What surprised you most about coming into the world of banking? I think a lot of people will have the preconception that it's very corporate, that we're all kind of suits and ties, and whereas, well, I'm hoping you're going to say not at all, but maybe you'll disagree with me. What's been the biggest surprise in terms of the culture?
No, 100%. You're entirely right there, Fiona. So I joined just at the beginning of COVID, basically. So I worked from home for a good 2 years on the grad scheme. But one, in that period, and two, when going back, I haven't seen anyone wear a tie, I don't think, ever in the office, which is fantastic, because who wants to wear a tie every day? I think as well, just culturally, I can't speak for the entire banking industry, but at least at Santander, a massive amount of value is given to individual well-being, and a lot of it is about the individual and how you're doing, rather than just you must, sell this many products, or you must bring on this many customers, or do this many spreadsheets, whatever. It's all very, very reasonable, I would say. I'd say as well, just to the people watching, if you do have any questions that you want to know from us, this is the best chance to ask them, because how often do you get the chance to ask questions direct to people who are in the position that you could be in a couple of years' time?
Well, funny you say that, Remi, because we have had a question through. So Roshni or Remi, either of you can answer this. What sort of skills should students focus on developing in order to stand out when applying for jobs? Do either of you want to take that?
I can take this. I think, again, because I left straight out of school, for me, a skill looking back at it that I wish I did have was just understanding how different things are in the workplace as opposed to being at school, which is, so it can be pretty obvious. Obviously, there's a big difference in what you're doing, but it's very easy just to almost still feel like you're at school. And like Remi said, if you make a mistake at school, it's okay, you know, it's not that serious. But like, if you did make it at work, then you would be held accountable for it, which can be daunting, but it's also to understand that, you know, you're in a different position as you were when you were in school. And I think also a lot of people say, could just answer that question, say, oh, financial skills, because you work as a banking, you work in banking. But I think it's also soft skills, especially with my role, because it's very customer facing. You want to have those skills to make sure that you're a warm, like people person, you're able to have conversations with your customers. But also I think on the opposite side of that, also being able to have difficult conversations with people, which a lot of people can shy away from. Like when I was an apprentice, my first rotation, I felt as if I was, you know, I really felt out of my depth because I did econ for A level, but with econ it's so different to banking, and it's just a completely different world. So I felt very out of my depth, and I even said to my manager, like, it's not a conversation I wanted to have, but I said, look, I don't really understand what I'm doing, and which is absolutely fine. Which is like, in Santander, I think the culture's like that on your well-being, and also really, it really promotes your own development. So yeah, I think those are the sort of the three skills that I would say are really important, that you can sort of apply to everything in life, not just your career as well.
I totally agree with that. When you think of skills, it's very easy to fall into the trap of thinking of what are my actual like hard skills, you know, whether that be being good at Excel or being creative writing the letter, whatever it may be. But I think that stuff can all be taught. You know, when you join any company after school, they don't expect you, like Fiona was saying earlier, to be the finished product. They expect you to come there and then learn things. So I think more important than any actual tangible skill is an attitude and a willingness to show up and learn, which is a soft skill, like Roshni was saying.
Amazing, yeah, and definitely just to add to that, we don't, like I said before, we don't expect anybody to turn up with 20 years worth of work experience in the bank. And it's almost, you know, if we're asking you a question about a time perhaps when you made a mistake, we're not going to focus on, oh my gosh, they made a mistake and we're never going to employ them. Actually, it's all around, how did you deal with that mistake and how did you rectify it, or how did you identify it? Because we're not looking for that perfect person, because we acknowledge that doesn't exist. Yeah, no matter whoever we're recruiting for. So we've got another question in. So how did you decide that this is what you're going to do and the steps that you would take to achieve it? So I guess we've already covered in terms of deciding whether you would do an apprenticeship or go to university. But once you got into the bank, and you've both mentioned the rotations that you did, how did you decide, okay, actually, you know, this is a role that I want to end up in, and kind of base my career on this role?
Yeah, I'm willing to go first for this one. So the great thing about all the schemes is that they are rotation based. So it's built into the scheme that you will do multiple different things while on that program. So for me in finance, it's 3 years long, and each year you're doing an entirely different thing than you were for the last year. So you have a great opportunity then to actually see different areas of the bank, and based on that, decide, oh, I like this or not this, and so on. So for me, I had quite a broad range, going from just core accounting to treasury, which is kind of like the bank's internal bank, to strategy, what I'm doing now. So it's gone from like a very process-driven role to one that's kind of half process, half like ad hoc, to one that's fully ad hoc on the fly, hairs on fire, the world might end if you don't do things correctly. And I found that I liked the last one more, which is why I've gone to the last one. So the schemes inherently allow you to get that exposure to different areas to decide what to do. And the second part of the question, like, how did you achieve that? Talk to people. Like, if you just email whoever manages that team or that area and ask them for something, the worst thing they can do is say no, which I know is a cliche, but is actually true. You're in the same position if they say no that you were if you hadn't asked in the first place. So just go for it.
Great advice there, Remi. And I think even if you're wanting to connect with somebody and you're not already at Santander or another company, you know, join LinkedIn, get your LinkedIn profile going, and then reach out to people on LinkedIn, ask for their advice and their experience. And as Remi said, The worst they can do is say no. So we've had another question, probably the last question that we can take as we're running out of time. So Roshni, what's the best way to get involved in an apprenticeship when the person who submitted this question leaves school next year? How did you go about identifying an apprenticeship and applying?
Well, I think I just Googled it, honestly. I just Googled. So I knew I wanted to go into banking because I was going to do economics at uni. And with that, I was going to go into a banking career. So I just Googled degree apprenticeships, banking degree apprenticeships. And I think the time period in which I Googled it was January time. So I know there's a JP Morgan does an apprenticeship and then they open in October, but majority of them all start to open January time. So that's when I started just Googling it, and different ones came up every day. And I literally applied for quite a few. I'd say over 10 I applied for. Just to see what was the best fit for me. And the reason why I went with Santander was because of the rotational nature of the scheme. Because for majority of the apprenticeships, I think you sort of do a role and you're just doing your degree on the side. But with Santander, you're just learning so much about the bank. I may not have enjoyed all of them, but at least now I know what that area of the bank does. And the skills I do pick up from that area, I can use in any sort of job. Like all the rotations I've done and all the skills I've learned, I use every day in the current job that I have. So I think, yeah, that's sort of I've literally just digressed so much. I don't even remember the question.
No, so it was all around how to identify and get involved in apprenticeships. So you definitely answered that. And I think I mentioned earlier, if you are interested in Santander, then we have our talent pool, which you can sign up for. So you can find that on the website. And I'm sure that lots of other companies have the same as well. So you can sign up to it and then you'll get emails of our apprenticeships are opening soon. And yeah, you will be told when they're open for applications. Yeah, we have come to the end of our session. That has absolutely flown by. But thank you so much to all of you that have joined and for all of your questions as well. Hopefully you have found that useful and we've inspired you to enter into a career in banking. If you do think of any questions afterwards or want to find out any more information, then hopefully you can see our names on screen. So please feel free to add us on LinkedIn or reach out to us via ACCA. They've got our details and yeah, we can provide any support that you might need. But yeah, enjoy the rest of your day and week and hopefully see some of you at Santander soon. Thanks everyone.